Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Authentic Interaction Mastery, where we explore and discover different ways of engaging our most important interactions every week, every month, every year, so we can achieve that success, that significance that we so much desire. Now, have you ever walked away from a conversation and went, man, I didn't get everything I needed out of that, missed expectations, or maybe you think about like 10 minutes later, you're like, oh, if I'd only asked this or said this or that something would have been radically different. Well, Authentic Interaction Mastery is our attempt to really look at how do we do that and not have those missed expectations, those regrets from those most important interactions. Well, one of the reasons why I'm so interested in authentic interactions is because, well, when I was an engineer, a chemical engineer, an engineer, left side of the brain, left side logic, all that kind of stuff, and I watched people make decisions, and there was a rational decision to make, but people made these irrational decisions. And so I started studying communication because I was interested in how people screwed up perfectly good decisions. Well, 35 years later, taking lots of courses, studying it as a consultant, now I'm looking at, wow, how do you help people engage authentically in those interactions so that they make good, wise decisions? Well, here we are. I'd like you to show up here as authentically as you can, interact with this time that we're spending together, because you're taking some time out of your busy schedule, time here to focus on you, to focus on your development, your health, and your growth. So show up as authentic self, remove all those distractions that you might have. Don't multitask while you're here. Focus on being here so that you can engage this authentically, because when we engage authentically, so much more is exchanged. Wisdom, trust, energy. So remove all those distractions. Take some notes. Bust out that journal. Take some notes, circle some things and go like, wow, that's an important point. I need to remember that one. Or I need to take some action on this one. This is really important for me to do. So take some great notes today. Be open and vulnerable. We're going to be doing some assessment today. And you can say like, well, I was a 10, a 10, a 10, a 10. I did great on that. Well, you're not going to get anywhere that way because you're not learning. So be open, vulnerable. I kind of think about being at these sessions when I attend learning sessions like this for myself, personal or business development. I put myself on the altar, meaning it's like, okay, today something really important is going to be told to me, and I need to hear that thing. And I've got to open up my receptacle, be very open to hearing, what is that one thing that's going to change what I do or how I think? So be open and vulnerable. And now get here, be present, let's get into the day. And as I'm building up the energy, I'm going to ask you to kind of slow it down. I love doing this exercise called Alive in the Senses. So if you would just take the book that you had there, the journal, put it down, get comfortable in your chair. Take a deep breath. And another deep breath. Close your eyes and just breathe for a second. Just breathe. Yes, that's great. And then, what are you hearing that you didn't hear before? Maybe it's something outside. Maybe it's something inside. Maybe it's your stomach grumbling from breakfast or lack thereof. But what are you hearing right now? And with your eyes still closed, what do you taste? Roll your tongue around in your mouth a little bit. What do you taste? And then with the next big breath, what do you smell? something that you didn't smell before. Maybe it's a hint of something in the air. Now, what are you feeling? Maybe something across your skin. What are you feeling? Maybe it's your hair brushing across your skin. Maybe it's how your clothes are hanging on your body someplace. Great. Now open your eyes and look around. Now you might be in a place that you've been for many, many years, but look around. What do you see that you've never seen before? Something that just is popping out at you. Maybe it's a glint off a doorknob. Maybe it's a cobweb up in the corner. Whatever it is, but what are you seeing that you've never really seen before? Because there's newness all around us. This is alive in the senses. And this really helps us to get present in this place, really opening and expanding our body into sensing things that maybe we didn't before. Now, this exercise probably took about 2 minutes to do. But oftentimes I do this right before I'm ready to go on stage or do something really big, go into a great big meeting. I take a little moment, even if it's for 10 or 15 seconds, and I kind of go like, what am I feeling? What am I smelling? And it really takes my energy, and in a good way, it centers it. It drops it, and it hits a groove in a way. It's like, yeah, now I'm ready to go. So alive in the senses, this is one way that we can really look at showing up authentically and engaging our authentic interactions maybe just a little bit differently. All right. Well, some of the mindset of authentic interaction mastery is that, first of all, that we can actually learn how to communicate better. Now, I know that might sound simple or kind of funny to you, but there's so many people that say, why would I take a communication class? I got this all the time when I was taking my master's in communication. It's like, why are you taking communication? We all communicate every day. It's like, because it's something to be masters at. Because it's our voice, it's what we put out in the world, it's what people hear from us. So to be able to put communication, in a nice package, in an authentic way, to persuade, to influence people, to move people. So that's why we look at authentic interaction mastery. That's one big thing, is that we can get better at it. The second thing is, don't you think planned interactions go better than unplanned ones? When I used to teach sellers this all over the world, I'd say, do you do a call plan? And they go like, a call plan is just planning out your customer meeting. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, where is it? I'm like, well, it's in my head. It's like, then it's not really a plan, because you haven't really planned out what you're going to do and wrote those objectives down, what questions you're going to ask. So planned interactions go better than unplanned interactions. Okay. And the last one, and this one I got from a friend of mine, Charlie Caldwell. Every interaction is an opportunity to serve. And this is my opportunity to serve you today, this Saturday, or whenever you're watching. This is my chance to serve you. So every interaction is that opportunity to serve something, somebody else or something bigger than yourself. Well, I've got a framework for this. Of course I do. It's called the Sushifu framework. And if you haven't said it out loud yet, you just need to say it. Say Sushifu or Susufu. Sushifu framework is, first of all, if there's this interaction, and I look at this green circle as the unit of value, that's the unit of value. And when I taught sellers for 17 years all over the world, I used to draw this circle in 2 stick figures, and they'd go like, who is this guy? And I'm like, that's the most important interaction that a seller has, is that interaction with a customer, or in marketing, or with you in your life. Maybe it's your significant other, but that is the unit of value of authentic interaction. 2 people talking to each other. So what's important here? Value gets exchanged. When we show up authentically, value could mean dollars, could be transactional, but I think of value as wisdom, trust, confidence, energy. Those things are transferred when we show up authentically. How do we do that? We set those interactions up. We think about those ahead of time. We say, what are my objectives? What are my emotional objectives for this conversation? And for my goal for this person to feel, after the conversation. So set up is the first part. Show up is the second part. Hey, we can set it up, but then you got to show up. What do you do to show up? Man, in my studio here, I play music ahead of time. I'm bouncing around, taking deep breaths. I'm like, man, I want to really show up for these folks. So how do I show up? Man, you got to bring that energy and really dive into what is this learning moment? What's this wisdom moment that I'm creating? And then finally, how do you follow up? One of the biggest issues that I've seen in corporate, working there for 30 years, was we'd have a great meeting, but the follow-up was terrible. It's like, well, what decisions got made? Let's validate and reinforce those. Let's follow up and say, what did you agree to do? We're going to do these things. So what's that follow-up look like? This is just so simple, but it's so much, we can get so much better at this as we go. So that's the Su Shu Fu framework for authentic interaction. Now, let's use this a little bit today. We're going to do a little bit of an action item here. So, first of all, this activity, name 5 people who significantly impact your success. Bust out that journal. Name 5 people who significantly impact your success. Go ahead and take a few seconds writing those down. Five people. And as you're writing, I'm going to give you a few of mine, just to give you examples of them. One is I have my business development coach that I talk with, and I speak with that person every once in a while. I have personal development coaches as well, people who help me with my personal side of things. Another one that I look at is my relationships. And if you know me really well, I've got spreadsheets for just about everything. And one of the things that I have a spreadsheet for is I have a spreadsheet where I have a list of people, prospects, and I have the amount of impact they're going to have on my business, possible impact, potential impact, and actual impact. And then I subtract that. And then that is what I rise to the top. And those are the people that I say, these are the highest impact that I'm not tapping into. These people I talk to every month so that I can get that impact on my business. So those, I call those my relationship impact gaps. I have prospects, just talking to prospects. And then also my significant other. She's my rock, and so part of that is like, I gotta put her on my list too in terms of importance of my success. So who are your 5 people? If you want to share, go ahead and put it in the comment section. So if these people are really important to your success, are you meeting with all of them next week? Any of them next week? So write those down and just go like, ooh. Hopefully there's a gap right there. You go like, I need to do this. And whenever I do this, I always sit back and I go like, oh, I'm not talking to enough prospects every week. And we're going to talk more about that today too. So when I created Authentic Interaction Mastery, and I'm looking at Su Shu Fu, and I really sat back and I thought, I want to create a monthly program because I believe each of us have at least 10 authentic interactions, really important, significant interactions every month. And if we proactively think about those things, we set them up, show them up, and follow up those interactions every month, that our business will go better, our lives will be better. And so that's why I set this up. So think about over the last, let's say, month, what were some of the important interactions that you've had over the last month? Write those down. Let's just say the last week. Let's just not take a month. Let's just take a week. Yeah, let's do a week. So over the last week, what are 3 or 4 or 5 important interactions that you had in the last week? Go ahead and write those down. And I'll give you some examples of mine as you're dashing yours down. I had my Wisdom Council monthly group together this past week. that was such important for me, and went so great. I had my business development coach. I talked with him this week just to talk about my offerings and how I'm putting those together for next year and for the next decade. I talked to a few prospects this week, which is good. I'm happy to do that, and I'm not talking to enough prospects every week, and that's my goal, is to talk to more and more, which is important for me. I talked to a few clients this week. I opened up a new corporate account this week, a new corporate engagement, which is great. So I've talked with them a few times this week. I have a collaborator that I work with, on some of the stuff that I'm doing, so that's great too. And then also, I have a lot of philanthropic things that I do. So this past week, I'm on the board for dance and the performing arts here in my town, and so we had a board meeting this week. So I added that to my list of important interactions this past week. So those were my important interactions over this past week. What were your 2 or 3? And if you're sitting there going like, well, I didn't have many this week, it's like, oh my gosh, there's your first gap. Is go take a look at those and go like, who's really important for my success, and did I talk to those people? So go ahead and do that. Great. Now, when you look at that, what were your gaps? My gaps always, typically when I do this, is I need to talk to more of my prospects, which is really important for me. So now we're going to take one of those interactions and circle that in your journal. Take a circle or highlight it or whatever and just say, we're going to analyze one of those interactions that you had this past week. You ready? Okay, we're going to analyze that using the intentional interaction plan. So here we go. The intentional interaction assessment, the very first question you ask, take that interaction that you had, and the interaction was well planned. If you gave it a 1 is like, oh, it just popped up. I should have thought about it more, but I didn't. And so I just kind of showed up, I reacted to it, and so that's a 1. A 10 would be, man, I set up an intentional interaction plan. What are the objectives? What are the questions I was going to have for these folks? What were some of the objections that they might have? Did you set up like a rough agenda of how the conversation would flow? And did you write all that down? Ooh, and not only did you write it down, did you bounce it off of somebody and say, hey, I'd like you to take a look at this, and then they changed it a little bit? Man, that's setting it up where the interaction is really well planned. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that for every interaction, but should you do that for some of your interactions over the course of a month? Of course you should. So for me, I'm going to choose my Wisdom Council monthly. So that was an important interaction for me this past week, and it went pretty well. So the setup for that, I set up my sheets for that and my curriculum development for that. So I'm going to give myself a 9.5 for that. Why? Because there's always room to improve. There's things I could do better. I could have thought through a little bit more of what does each person need and who's going to show up. Probably a little bit better setup too is to set up with making sure that they all show up as well. So a little bit more marketing for that would be good. So that's the first question. The interaction was well planned. Second question. Show up. I engaged in this interaction as my best self. Now you went and you like, my 3 words are, or my best self is, and I'm going to show up to that interaction. And you showed up as your best self. On a 1 to 10 scale, 1 would be like, I was so guarded. I didn't want to say these things. Gosh, I was kind of passive aggressive with it. Be honest with yourself. It's like, I didn't put everything on the table that I really could or should have on the table. So I engage this interaction as my best self, show up. For mine, I gave myself a 9.5 again for the Wisdom Council Monthly. I love these people. They're so awesome and so great, my Wisdom Council members. And I hope you can join me at a Wisdom Council in the future. But these folks, man, I showed up, and when I showed up, man, they show up, and it's just so interactive. So I gave myself a 9.5, even though I would have loved to put a 10, but you can always tweak that little bit more and go like, how could I have brought up more energy and been a little bit more energetic? Maybe used words differently and encourage and cheerlead people a little bit more. So I engaged in this interaction as my best self. Next question for your authentic interaction. Everyone agreed to the next best actions. Oh, this is so tough to get a good score on. Why? Because when you have that authentic interaction, during that course, you should say like, so we agreed on X. you agreed to do Y, I agreed to do Z, and we agreed to do that by these times, and we're going to follow up with these people, and this is what we're going to produce when we do that. I mean, so it's kind of like a little action plan. So who, what, and when are you going to do stuff? So everyone agreed to the next best actions. Out of the authentic interaction that you're evaluating, a 1 would be like, it was a great conversation, but I don't think we agreed to do anything after it. Or 10 would be like, man, we have a really detailed plan and something really moved forward on this. For me, with the Wisdom Council Monthly, I'd give it an 8.5. I think we just had a great conversation. There was a couple challenges put out there, but did we really talk about this is what each of us are going to do over the course of the next month? Nah, it wasn't that specific. So I gave it an 8.5. Authentic. So of course, if we're doing authentic interaction, you gotta rate yourself on authenticity. So the interaction was extremely authentic. We, not just me, we jumped the authentic chasm, meaning there was a vulnerability there, and there was like, oh, should I say this? Should I not say this? Should we go there or not? I'm not sure. And then you go like, yeah, we're gonna do that. So authentic chasm, we overcame the barriers and got very real. To me, man, when you jump that authentic chasm into it, not over it, but into that authentic chasm, man, things get really real. And sometimes they don't go great. You just kind of stumble down the hill a little bit. But man, if you're really showing up and your intention's clear and you jump that authentic chasm, magic happens. So Wisdom Council, again, 9.5. I think some really cool things happened, during our Wisdom Council monthly call, which was great. I'm really happy about that. So I gave it a 9.5. Always room for improvement. And finally, the number 5 thing, was there value exchanged? There was tremendous value exchanged for all parties, not just me, not just them, but if there's 17 people in the room, did all 17 walk away with like, I got some value out of that? And that helps us really look at, are there passive people in there? Do we really engage the people that aren't participating that much? So there was tremendous value exchange for all parties. What did you rate it? 1 would be, man, it was a destructive meeting. Might even be negative value. But there might be like, well, it was a good conversation, but nothing really of high value. Then it might be lower. But tremendous value, that's a 10. For me, I gave the Wisdom Council a 9. I think it was great to have the discussion. There was great collaboration on the call. But I'd give it a 9 because there's room for improvement here to make it a 10. So what was your score? For me, I scored, I think this is 46. If I roll it up, multiply it by 2, I got a 92% on this Wisdom Council monthly call. That's awesome. And the engineer in me, that chemical engineer goes like, but where's that 8%? Well, the 8% really sits a lot with the follow-up and the value. And so if I looking at that interaction, looking at Wisdom Council Monthly for next month, I go like, well, now I know where to improve. I know that I have to look at more concrete follow-up action items, and that's where more value is going to be exchanged. I hope that makes sense for you, and I hope that gives you a little bit of value. And most importantly, by looking backwards at some of our interactions, it's not about beating ourselves up, but it's like learning from past experiences. I'd love to hear from you. Put in the chat, what did you score on yours as a score 46 or whatever, or multiply it by 2. What was your score for your authentic interaction? What was the gap? What was the learning that you got from that? All right, well, I'm so glad you're here. And authentic interaction mastery is so important to get right. I'd like you to think now about the month ahead. For the next 4 weeks, list out 3 important interactions that you're going to have in the next month. Go ahead and take 30 seconds to do that. What are the 3 most important interactions that you've got in the next month? And write those down. Maybe you need to open your calendar and look at, wow, what are the interactions that I have? Maybe you know them off the top of your head. Mine, for me, I have clients that I'm talking to. I have Be Me Mastery in the next week or so. I've got corporate clients. I'm going to go out to travel to the East Coast this week and meet with a client, which is great. I'm going to meet with my story coach this next week. I'm so excited about that for my personal story. And then I've got philanthropic things. I've got another board meeting with a different board that I'm on next week as well. And of course, the biggest list for me is prospects. Talk to people. I got a lot of people I want to talk to over the next, before the end of the year, so let's get that rolling. So as you wrote down your 3 interactions for the next month, are they also linked to your success? So what does that success look like for you? And success is simple. It's just achieving an aim or a goal. So what is your success? And do those interactions link to your success? And if they don't, or if there's somebody you should meet with, maybe it's somebody that you should ask a big ask of, maybe you should add that person to that list. Great. And for me, always talk to more prospects. I've got a spreadsheet of 800 people I want to chat with, talk with. These are friends and people who I've interacted with over the last 30 years of my career. And I just want to make sure that I keep track of those folks. So I got a lot of folks to talk to. And then in the download is in the member area, you've got the intentional interaction plan. And that's a way where these are set up in there. But really, download that intentional interaction plan. Fill it out for those 3 interactions. That's a challenge for you. Really, download it, fill it out for those 3 interactions because they will go better if you plan them. All right, they'll go better if you plan them. So let's plan them out. All right. Well, that ends the assessment part of Authentic Interaction Mastery this month. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something. Did you circle a couple of important points? Is there an action item that you took out of this? Highlight those in your journal and make sure you follow up on those, because what I want for you is for you to engage your world, influence, and have those authentic interactions so you can achieve your success and create that significance in the world to make a difference, change the world for good. So I'd like to now transition to our topic of the day. I'm so excited about this because this is a new topic for me. And it's something that it's about wisdom. And so I'll ask again, have you ever walked away from a conversation and you felt like something bubbled up there, but it didn't exactly, you didn't get everything out of it that you wanted. There was a missed expectation, or there was, I wish I could have said this differently, or I don't know, just some missed value, some value left on the table. Well, what I think about that is it's about wisdom. We missed some wisdom. So I'd like you to think about, over the course of the last, let's just say 2 weeks, think about an interaction that was just less fulfilling than you thought it could be, maybe from your perspective or from their perspective, but just write that down in your journal. What was that one interaction that was just that wasn't everything it could be? Go ahead and write that one down. Now, as you think about that one, what do you think made it less valuable? What made it less valuable? So write down some things about what made it less valuable. And I'll give you some thoughts on that. Maybe one person kind of filled the channel too much. So somebody talked too much. And so everybody's opinions, nothing got co-created because it was really that one person's idea and they just kind of filled the channel, and that kind of thing. Maybe somebody emotes too much. And I know, we want to hold people in a container for people and their emotions, but also, sometimes people just consume you with that. They kind of take your energy out of those situations. And so maybe that was something that happened there. There's people that fill voids. Maybe there was this nice moment of silence, and then somebody filled it up because, they got so uncomfortable with the change, and I got to fill up that space. And that filled up space was with something that wasn't very valuable. Maybe there's somebody that was just reclusive. They don't say anything. They didn't do anything. And so there wasn't a lot of value for that person, or that person didn't put value on the table that maybe they could have. And then there's those situations where maybe somebody was just physically imposing. So, there's times where somebody's just like, they fill that space because they're just bigger than life, and it's great. But man, if it's imposing in some ways, maybe that just lessened the value as well. So take that interaction that you had and what made it less valuable. And I just write that down. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that today, about how to increase the value of situations. The story that I had, I remember doing orals with orals is like when you propose work to a client, to a prospective client. And it was a big meeting, and there were 5 of us. There were 5 partners from the company Accenture that we went in. And we went in, and one of the partners, man, he was just so arrogant. And so he went in, and it was like, he talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. Yes, and he did, all this kind of stuff. He literally, I just figured it was like 70 to 80% of the time, his mouth was open over the course of an hour. And so when it was all complete, we went into the car, and it's like, yeah, high five, didn't that go well? And I'm like, in my head, I was going like, we lost the work. And we did, we lost the work. Because he thought he did a great job, but he just filled the space so much. It really wasn't this authentic interaction. We set it up great, but he showed up and filled the channel, and it just didn't go well. So those are the kinds of things that we look for. But also, let me tell you a different story and how we're going to get into wisdom presence, the habits of wisdom presence. I was in a steering committee meeting, and it was a high-level executive. And I've told this story before, but man, it was so good, where he was an imposing guy. He was a tall guy, and he was fit, he was a runner. And we had this meeting, and my senior manager was up at the podium, and he was changing the slides, going through the slides like we're doing here, film. And I knew there was this one slide that he may not agree to. And that slide went up, and I looked at him, and he wrinkled his nose. He's like this. And I could hear people go like, ooh. And so my senior manager saw that, flipped like through 2 slides in the next 30 seconds, like, oh, moved on. I was like, wait, go back. You wrinkled your nose at that. What was that about? And his people just gasped, because they were like, oh my gosh, he called him on that wrinkled nose thing that he always does. And nobody had done that before. Nobody had the courage to show up that way. He goes, well, let's go back a couple slides. Yeah, that. I totally disagree with that slide. Your conclusion there is just, I disagree. And for the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes, he and I had the conversation about that difference of opinion. And I'll be honest with you, he didn't come to my side, and I didn't go to his side. But in the end, we literally said, well, we agree to disagree on this. But we had a healthy conversation about it, which is great. And we got more depth to that issue. And he understood a little bit more what I was saying. I understood a little bit more what his position was. After the meeting, a couple of his people came up to me and said, wow, that was bold. That was courageous for you to do that. And I said, wow, I was just calling it. So what I look at that is, I call that an emotional blip. And that is, I was watching, I was opening my awareness and watching, I was feeling something, and then I said something. So watch, feel, say. Watch, feel, say. Those things were really important for me as key learnings, and I had to be very present to do that. Hold on a second, I got something here. Okay, something popped up on my screen. I was like, wow, what's going on there? So I just want to make sure that I'm recording and giving you everything you got here. All right, so I call that an emotional blip, and that was a watch, feel, and say moment for me. So let me give you the definition of wisdom. Wisdom is the soundness of act or decision based on knowledge, experience, and good judgment. I'll say it again. Wisdom is soundness of act or decision based on knowledge, experience, and good judgment. Well, that is, when we exchange wisdom, then that's trust. There's so much that gets exchanged there. So my mindset is that in every interaction, there's the opportunity to learn. In every interaction, there is the opportunity for wisdom to get exchanged and to get shared. And so I look at wisdom as something that we can work on. We can work on getting better at exchanging that wisdom, noticing when it's there, being in the presence of it, and then what do we do when we're in the presence of that wisdom? How do we engage our world and so that we can receive that wisdom in a way and really work with it? So, those interactions are a way to gather wisdom, and we can improve those habits. And so I want to share with you, this is such a great quote. I love this. We are what we repeatedly do. And I try to guess who said this. We are what we repeatedly do. Yep, isn't that true? And that is action, right? Excellence then is not an act. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. So if we want to be excellent at something, excellence isn't something that happens in a moment. Excellence is something that we work on. It's a habit, something that we work on over and over again. And habits are something that we get better at. And so when we talk about wisdom, today we're going to talk about being in the presence of wisdom and what are our wisdom presence habits. That was Aristotle. Man, we've known this for centuries. Since 2,500 years ago, we knew that excellence was a habit. If we just study that stuff, which, gosh, I'm doing a lot more with my Greek studies lately because they've got gold from that, and we need to be reminded of the wisdom that they had 2,500 years ago. So, habits. What are the 7 habits of wisdom presence? And I'm going to go through these, write these down, but what I'm looking for here is there's a trigger that happens when we're in the presence of wisdom. And what does that look like? What does that presence look like? Well, first of all, we speak with confidence and conviction. Right? We speak with confidence and conviction. Then we listen actively. We listen actively. We act consciously. We speak with confidence and conviction, listen actively, act consciously. We watch for subtleties, like I did with that executive. We watch for those subtleties that happen. We open our awareness and see those things happening. We emote with empathy. We don't just emote all over the place. If we emote all over the place, it's like, filling up the channel with a lot of stuff, and we're like, we're sliming people with emotion sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes emotion is great, but if we emote with empathy, being aware of the people around us as well, not because they should control us, but being aware of we're being held in that space. We feel inclusively. So not just what we feel, I want to feel, but we feel what people are feeling all around us as well. And then we learn deeply. These are the 7 habits of wisdom presence. When we speak with confidence and conviction, listen actively, act consciously, we watch for those subtleties, we emote with empathy, we feel inclusively, and we learn deeply. Man, those are the things that generate that wisdom. Then we become this instrument of wisdom gathering. Hopefully that makes sense for you. I love this topic, and if you have any questions about that, definitely let me know. Hold on a second, let me see if something else is working here. Yes, okay, we're still going. So these are the 7 habits of wisdom presence. Now, there's enough in these too. I mean, look at these as habits on a 1 to 10 scale. How good are we at speaking with confidence and clarity and conviction? What are our competencies in each of these things? But what I want to give you today too, as well, is a little bit of strategies and tips for these things. So first of all, what are 7 strategies to show up in the presence of wisdom? Now, the first thing I want to talk about here a little bit, I thought of this right before we joined. So when I think about wisdom, what is a wisdom trigger? How do you know when you're in the presence of wisdom? We kind of know that after the fact, but how do you know when you're in it? And so when I think about wisdom triggers, a wisdom trigger is a time where somebody says or does something and it radically changes, or just changes subtly, the trajectory of my actions or decisions next. Now, if there's a lot of wisdom in there, I'm going to radically change my actions or decisions. And sometimes that's like, I have a point B and I was kind of scattered, but somebody gives me a wisdom and now I'm more aligned to getting to my point B. That might be a great wisdom moment. So what are those wisdom triggers? And if you think about your life over even the last week or two, what have been a couple of things that somebody has said that you go like, oh, and then you have to do something different? I hope we had one of those today already, but it might not have been. It might have been something over the last 2 weeks that you go like, oh, this is the thing that changed radically how I'm thinking about things, my next action and my next decisions. So that's what a wisdom trigger is. So how do we get better at really getting that wisdom, gathering that wisdom, kind of harvesting that wisdom out of those moments? The first one is open to the feeling. Alive in the senses. That exercise we did up front, that's a great first step in that presence, in getting in that presence of wisdom. Being here with you, imagining who I'm talking to, so powerful for me to go like, yeah, I'm talking with you. I'm talking with you. Because I want to aliven those senses and open up those feelings. And that allows me to really connect a lot better. Number 2, learn by watching. And kinesics. Kinesics is the study of movement and body. So when I think about learning by kinesics, by watching, what's the body position of things? So, I watched that person, he crinkled his nose, there was something in there, so I'm watching that, watching for those subtleties. So learn by watching. Be an expert at watching for things, those subtle things that are out there. What are you watching that you can learn from? Oh, that's so powerful. It's kind of watching with your eyes and not, it's like, what am I thinking about next? Where are you going to push in the channel? But what are you receiving from the channel? Third, learn by listening, active listening. And I put here vocalics. That's another nonverbal. Vocalics is, don't just listen to the words being said, but listen to the tone. What's the melody that somebody's using? Because that might indicate that they're feeling depressed or that they're feeling energetic about this. Are they speeding up really fast because they're nervous because they have to go really fast because I have so much time to do and I have so much more content to give you, and then you can't understand anything I'm saying anymore. That's about vocalics. So learn not only by listening, but listening, I love this. Listen to what's not being said. Whew, powerful. Write that one down. Listen to what's not being said. Sometimes what's not being said is so much more important than the words that are coming out of somebody's mouth. So number 3, learn by listening. Number 4, practice your speak. What does that mean? Well, practice what you're going to say. One of the things that I do before some of these sessions is I look at what I'm going to say and I go like, what's an important thing that I want to really bring across? And then I say that phrase, and I say that phrase over and over and over again. Practice your speak. Practice your speech. Practice what you're going to say. Practice the words. What are the words going to sound like? And sometimes in those most important interactions, how many times, if you have 3 important interactions every month, let's just say 3, how often do you actually practice what you're going to say? Oh my gosh. So that's a way to be in the presence of, how am I going to speak in this moment? That's so important. Number 5, stage your act. I know I come from a little bit of a theater background, but stage your act. And that's all about proxemics. That's another nonverbal term, proxemics. Stage your act. When I look at that, whenever I walk into a space, it's like, I've got this objective for today's meeting. This is the emotion that I want to get across. So then how do I create spatially that feeling? When I do my wisdom councils, we sit in circle. We always sit in circle. Why? Because there's no power struggle in a circle. We're all equals. And that's so important to have that equal footing. So stage your act. Think about, am I up on a stage? Am I talking to somebody and they're sitting down and I'm standing over them? That's a power struggle. You know, I saw a great situation when I was in Greece a couple of weeks ago, and there was a tour guide working with 3 young girls. And he was describing what it was like to be at the Parthenon. But you know what he did? Oh, he was on one knee, and he was talking to the girls on their level and looking up from their perspective. He staged his act. He knew where he needed to be to talk to those girls, to be on their level. So stage your act, proxemics. Number 6, set emotional objectives. This is so important when you're in the presence of wisdom. What's the emotional objectives I have for this? Either to receive or to give in this situation. What are my emotional objectives for this authentic interaction? You know, are you there to exert authority? Well then, how do you do these things to exert authority? Or if you're there to receive direction, then I put myself on the altar. How does putting myself on the altar look different than setting up my authority? Be conscious about what are my emotional objectives for myself and the others in this conversation. And number 7, round the learning journey. And this is what I mean by that. When you say round the learning journey, it's like, what am I learning? What am I trying to put into the situation for them to learn? And what am I trying to take out of the situation for me to learn? Because that's the key piece of wisdom exchange, is learning deeply. All right, so hopefully this gave you some idea of some of the strategies you can use when you're in the presence of wisdom to gather it up, put it inside, and work with it. All right, cool. Now I'd like to go through, and I know, Linda, you love this part. What do people usually mess up in this? So I'm going to write this over on the board over here. What do people usually mess up? So the first one is level of emotion. The level of emotion. People often screw that up in the presence of wisdom. Big learning here. So how do I describe this? Let's see. So there's many times in circles where somebody's going through a painful experience and they're relaying something that's really difficult for them. And when I was taking and teaching Tai Chi, we'd often sit in circle and we'd talk about some stuff that was pretty painful from our past. Very ceremonial space. And when somebody started crying or went through a difficult thing, so many people have the immediate intention, like, oh, put their arms around them, oh, it's okay, hug them and smother them. And you know, the level of emotion, their emotion may be fine, the person experiencing it, but my reaction to it may not be the appropriate level. Sometimes all it takes is just putting out, you know, and touching the side of them a little bit, reading what they're needing in that moment, because they're emoting something so powerful. So the level of emotion, sometimes we can fill up a space and it can be too much, but sometimes the level of emotion is too little and we're not putting enough emotion on the space. So that level of emotion is often a place where people lose the whole point of this. Let's go back to the 7 habits, where they emote with empathy. Well, they're not emoting with empathy. They're over or under emoting for what's appropriate for the moment. So that's one of them. Second one, there are people out there, and I'm just going to call that, they fill the channel. You know, it's great to have authority. It's great to walk into a place and say, ooh, I command this space, which is great. But you also know the folks where in the presence of wisdom, they're like, woof, here I am, listen to me now. And it's like, no, when they fill the channel too much, they're not allowing the wisdom to come in. So sometimes people fill that channel way too much. They say too much, they speak too much, they act too much, they emote too much. So sometimes they just fill that channel way too much. The third one is no emotional objectives. And I can tell you, for 30 years in my career, I failed on this one. So oftentimes when we built curricula, we went out there and we built this great, here's the learning objectives, here's what we need to push to people. And it was just in the last few years I was like, oh, but what were the emotional objectives? Maybe I had those in my head, but we never wrote them down. Wow, the emotional objectives are so important to have for your teaching, for your coaching, and not just like, I want the people to feel better, but what specifically with this specific person do I want to have an objective emotionally with this person at the end of this conversation? So that's, people miss that oftentimes. People sometimes don't see the need, no need to build skills. That's amazing to me. But a lot of times people say, oh, I don't need to build skills in this area. I don't need to be better a communicator. I don't have to learn about kinesics and proxemics and haptics, all the nonverbal communication stuff. I don't have to learn how to influence better, persuade better. Oh, no. They just say, oh, I'm a good communicator. Well, they probably aren't. So there's a lack of need to build those skills. And finally, the biggest one to me, and I'm going to write this one, they miss a wisdom trigger. They miss a wisdom trigger. And what that means is there was a wisdom laid right on the table for you, and you just blew right past it. Why? Because you had objectives that you had, I want to do this thing, and you just missed it because your objectives were so overwhelming that you didn't see the wisdom that's there. This is really important for me. This is a big learning for me with my grandson and my grandsons and daughter. A lot of times those little people under 5 years old, they have so much wisdom. And it's just a matter of seeing, because they have not even a naivete, an innocence about them that is so pure. It's just like, oh, I need to relearn that one. I need to go back in that. Even my dog has this wisdom about her. I go down in the morning and to take her outside. She looks up at me and she's like, yes, this is the day. I'm so happy about this day. It's every day. That happens every day. And I'm like, dang, there's a wisdom in that, isn't there? Of like, how do I address every day, get up every day and go like, I need to be like my dog. I need to be like, let's go. Let's make this day a great day. So there's wisdom everywhere for us in the subtle little things. If we just aliven our senses, open up our habits, that wisdom is out there for us. Well, I hope this was helpful for you. These habits, it's great to look at them. But I'd like to now move on to, this is the habits assessment. So we go through the strategies, and then the 7 habits of wisdom presence. Here we are. We speak with confidence and conviction. We act consciously. We emote with empathy, learn deeply, feel inclusively, watch for subtleties, listen actively. Yes, we do those things. Those are the 7 habits of wisdom presence. If we really do those things well, we'll be aware of the wisdom that's around us, and we'll act and decide with soundness. But here's the beauty of this thing. Oh, just wait. You look for it. Oh, there's an assessment. So if you look at it, speak and listen are on the same dimension here. Are we really good at speaking with confidence? And are we really good at listening actively? And then if you look at this, if I act consciously, but also do I watch for subtleties? And do I emote with empathy, but also feel inclusively? These things, the emote, speak, and act are kinds of things that we put out there in these wisdom presence. And watch, listen, and feel are things that we receive. And to be really good at this, if we're really good, we learn deeply. So if you, and I bounced this off of a couple folks and they're like, wow, this is great. If you look at this, if I'm really good at these things and I move out on a 1 to 5 scale, look how my learn deeply expands. This whole area in the middle expands when I do all of these really well. That is where wisdom is exchanged. That's the soundness of wisdom. When we can expand that learning deeply and we can create this area in the middle that's like we're speaking our truths, we're acting consciously, we're emoting with empathy, but also feeling, all the people around us. We're watching for all the subtleties, and we're listening really actively. Boy, you do all those things well, and you are in the presence of wisdom. I hope that was helpful for you as we talked about these things. And hopefully you took away something from today that really helped with building your world, creating those authentic interactions that you have in the world. Well, that ends today's session. The challenge I have for you is to download the intentional interaction plan. Use that for the 3, 5, 6, 7 interactions that you have in the coming month. And then also take a look at this map and think about a moment that you have. Maybe this becomes a part of your intentional interaction plan about how am I going to speak with confidence and conviction? How am I going to watch for those subtleties? Maybe this becomes a part of your intentional interaction plan as well. But my challenge for you is to engage your interactions with influence, persuasion, achieve the objectives you're looking for, but also being aware of other people's objectives too, so that you can have those authentic interactions and exchange the value, exchange the wisdom, and be present in those wisdom moments. Well, thank you for being here. This has been awesome. Hopefully you've circled a couple things as important points. You've got a couple of action items out of today. You're going to do that, those intentional interaction plans. And I will leave you with this, as I always do. Live 100% empowered, not a victim of anything or any circumstance in the world, but you are the captain of your ship. Secondly, that you learn deeply. We talked a lot today about learning deeply, about being in the presence of wisdom. And our goal is just to learn deeply, even in those most difficult times, that we engage the learning of those, because it's just training for the next moment that we have something similar happen to us. And third, gosh, take that talent that you are and put it out in the world where it shines boldly. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next month.